Neil Grimsley, English 2132. Today I would like to talk to you about Susan King Taylor. After doing an annotated bibliography about her life, I found out just how amazing she was. One, for being African American during this period in history, and also by simply being a woman, both of which were marginalized. Susan King Taylor was born a slave on August 8, 1848, in Liberty County, Georgia, located in the southeast corner of the state. She died on October 6, 1912, in Boston, Massachusetts, far north from where she was born. Also, we have on this slide two images, both county seals. On the left, the seal of Liberty County, Georgia, and on the right, the seal of Boston, Massachusetts. Before the war, Susan King Taylor was born as Susan Ann Baker. She stayed in Liberty County until she was about 7 years old, when she was allowed by her master to go to Savannah and live with her grandmother. Her grandmother was very privileged at the time. She had her own house. It isn't known if she was a freed slave or if her master in Savannah allowed her to live on her own. While in Savannah, Susie gained something that was rare among slaves. This is the beginning of what made her stand out among the rest. She was lucky enough to be taught how to read and write. She was taught in a legal school by former slaves. During the war, Susie and some of her family were believed to have fled to Beaufort, South Carolina, where she began her service to the Union Army. She started as a laundress, but she rarely performed this service. Her knowledge gained while in Savannah was discovered, and the soldiers asked her to start a school. As I said before, her main duty was to be a laundress for the Union Army, but she spent the majority of her time being a nurse for the wounded soldiers during battles, while also teaching when she could. She was never paid for the work she did during the war. The group she worked for during the war was known as the 33rd United States Colored Troops, one of many. This isn't a really good picture, but it's a photograph of what's believed to be the 33rd United States Colored Troops. It's not close enough to actually tell that as a fact, but it comes from a good source. So it was also during the war that she found her first husband. He also served in the 33rd United States Colored Troops. He was Sergeant Edward King. After the war was over, she and her husband moved back to Savannah to start their lives as free individuals. Although her husband was a very skilled carpenter, he was unable to find work and turned to working at a shipyard. Her husband died in 1866 while at work by unknown causes. Susie was pregnant at the time. She opened her first school after the war where she taught African American children. Here's a photo of her class while in Savannah. After her husband's death, a new free school was opened nearby, and she was eventually forced to close hers. Her other attempts at schools ended in much the same way. She was eventually forced to leave her son with her mother and go to Boston to find work. While in Boston, she met and married her second husband, Russell L. Taylor. She also suffers the loss of her son during this time. Susie King Taylor helped to form the Corps 67 of the Women's Relief Corps. In her book, Susie writes about things that help us understand how she felt toward the end of her life and how she felt about the world around her. She wrote, "We cannot sing 'My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty.' It is a hollow mockery." This is on page 61 and 62 of her journal. She also states that my people are striving to attain the full standard of all other races, both free in the sight of God, and in a number of instances have succeeded. Just as we ask to be citizens of these United States, where so many of our people have shed their blood with their white comrades, that the stars and stripes should never be polluted. Page 75 through 76.